Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of a demonstration on setting up your canvas or your drawing board as well as sighting today. So I'm trying something a little bit different where I'm sitting behind the camera, right, and kind of ghosting the demo. What you're going to need today is any one of your pencils. The lead doesn't matter because we're not going to be using it to draw. We're going to be using it to sight and comparatively measure our objects. I always recommend having your kneaded eraser, your hard eraser, a chamois, which is just a cut up t-shirt or the actual chamois that you purchase, and your vine charcoal. Now you will notice that mine is teeny tiny, okay? You're gonna wanna resist the urge to pull out a whole stick, which is usually like, I don't know, about 5 inches long. Because what's gonna happen is if you pull out a stick that's about the length of a pencil, you're gonna start drawing like this, as if it is a pencil. But there's a major difference between the two, okay? Pencils have wood on all sides, and you can only draw with this tip of the utensil. The convenient thing about charcoal is the entire surface is charcoal, so you don't just draw with the tip, you can draw with every side of the surface. So I like having small broken pieces that I can hold easily between my top 2 fingers and my thumb. If you're left-handed, it works the same way. You just really want to have something that you can manipulate using the side of the material as opposed to trying to draw with the tip of it. It breaks very easily. I usually have like a whole little cup of charcoal next to me that I just keep putting smaller and smaller pieces in. A little's gonna go a long way. I think if I don't press too hard, this will get me through our entire demo. And then you're going to want, as you can see in front of me, 1 or 2 small boxes. I do recommend not setting them up, you know, stacked on top of each other. I recommend not setting them up so that you really only see one box. I usually try to do a little like tilty tilt, wham bam, right? Mine are close in size. Yours can be very different, okay? Your setup can be different than mine. You can tilt it, you can put them at angles, right? But I just like giving myself a little something so that I can see kind of a shadow relationship, one's in front of the other, things like that, all right? So we're going to start. Now my sketchbook is on the surface of my table, which means that it's really flat, and I'm gonna wanna lift it up often or pick up the camera and kind of show you it straight up and down so that my proportions don't get too elongated. You are going to be working in your drawing pad. I do recommend taping off all 4 sides of your drawing board with your masking tape. Sorry, I lost my charcoal and I lost my train of thought. I do recommend taping off all 4 sides of your drawing paper to your drawing board. That way you've got something sturdy to draw against, and it will give you clean edges. Now, whenever we start a drawing, we are always going to start with a grid. I'm gonna lift you off for this part. Again, trying a little bit of a new setup, so bear with me. So I've got my rule of 3 grid, okay? That's 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines. And the reason I'm setting up like this is because these marks here become our points of interest. That's where our composition is most engaging visually, okay? So I always want to put my composition there. The convenient thing is that Vine Charcoal erases very easily, okay? So that's why I'm not worried about pressing too hard right off the bat. Today we're gonna focus more on lines anyways, so it's okay that things show through because it's good to draw through the object and through the shapes. Shift a little bit. See, shift, shift. I'm sorry. Okay, now we want to start by finding our most basic shapes, which are going to be rectangles or squares. Okay, so I'm going to start by drawing a box for this one, and I'm going to hit this point of interest right here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my material, I'm going to pinchy, all right, pinching it, and I'm gonna just kind of quickly gesture in that there's a box there, right? I really drew a rectangle straight up and down. But now we're going to talk about sighting, and there is a video demonstration on sighting that you are going to need to see, okay? Because what I'll show you is that this line is perpendicular, right, to my paper. It's straight across, okay? But if I look, I can zoom in. Ooh. At the bottom of the shift box, it's at an angle, right? And if I bring my pencil down, I can see that that angle does not match what I've drawn. So that is sighting, like 101, okay? What you're doing is you are just doing comparative measuring or sighting, and by doing that, I'm laying this pencil object in my line of sight along the edge of what it is I'm drawing, okay? So laying it along the edge of the Garbage Pail Kids box versus laying it along the edge of the shift box, okay? Oop. So, now I know that that's already off a little bit, okay? What I'm going to do is adjust accordingly, okay? I'm going to draw my line in. I know that this line and my top line are always going to be parallel to each other. I know you're not coming to art class for a geometry lesson, but we're going to give you a little bit of like art geometry. I call it fake math, but it's actually still real math. And I'm going to draw through my shapes, right? And by drawing through my shapes, I'm meaning that these lines are overextending. I'm really not worried about them overextending, because what I'm worried about is getting my measurements right, okay? Now, another example of sighting, okay? A really important one is comparative measuring. What I'm doing is I'm taking my pencil and I'm setting it on the left edge of the shift box, and then I'm taking my thumb and I'm setting it on the other edge of this front face, okay? And then I'm going to move my entire setup so I can see just how small, right, this side edge is. See how I'm doing that? I'm not moving my thumb at all. I'm moving my whole arm over, and I can see how small it is. All right? Knowing how small it is lets me really adjust on my drawing in making sure I put this object so that it looks like it's going to be going back in space. Right now it doesn't look like it's going back in space because it's following this front line, okay? So I need to find this edge that I'm pointing out right there. And again, I can set my pencil up and I can see how steep of an angle that is, right? Like that seems very steep. Proportions moving back in space are always going to feel more exaggerated. And the reality is that your brain is going to try to autocorrect that, is what I call it. We all know that you don't mean to type the word duck, and that's what happens when your brain tries to make this angle bounce out a little more, right? It tries to make this angle here not feel as steep because you're overcompensating or you're on autocorrect, okay? It also creates what we call open lid syndrome, where you are trying to draw more of these faces that go back in space, okay? Speaking of open lid, we're gonna work on the lid of the box, okay? Again, I'm gonna measure, all right? Because our gut instinct when we draw that box, I'm actually gonna show you, would be probably to draw something like that, okay? Which it's hard to see at this angle just how bad that is. Not bad. Okay, bad's not the right word we want to use. Inaccurate. How inaccurate that is. It looks like the lid is lifting off of the page. Okay, that's open lid syndrome. That's what we don't want to do. So, I'm going to erase it. And what I'm going to do instead is we're going to zoom in again. Right? I'm going to find a comparative measurement. I'm going to set my pencil on the, I'm sighting through the phone, which is a little more complicated than I thought, but I can do it. I'm closing one eye when I do this too. I'm winking, okay, so that I can limit my depth perception. So I've got my pencil top aligned with the top of the black front face, and I've got my thumb aligned with the bottom. And now I can see that that is like a sliver in comparison, right? A hair. It is really not that much space. Okay, so I can find where I abandoned my teeny piece of fine charcoal. And what I'm going to do is, again, lines are always going to be perpendicular to each, or parallel to each other, okay? So line 1, line 2, and line 3 always going to match up. All right, same thing, all right? Line 1, line 2, line 3 are always going to match up. And you see I'm drawing over all of my edges, okay? Because I can erase back out. Again, when you're sitting, it's at a very bit of a distorted perspective, so you are going to want to lift your drawing board up or stand up or do some kind of a trick, but this is just so that I can show you how we use sighting, okay? And we're really focusing on line-based drawings right now. Now, the other really handy thing about sighting is it will let me measure the relationship between two objects, okay? So, for example, the shift box, the front face of it is almost exactly as large as this face of the Garbage Pail Kids box. So then I know that in my drawing, right, that Garbage Pail Kids box, oops, sorry for you to see what I just did there. I measured the front face of the shift box, right? And then I made a very curvy line. And instead I'm going to go through and I'm going to make a straight line that goes pretty much up and down my whole board, which is a little dramatic, but helpful for this moment, okay? That's how wide it's gonna be. Now what I'm gonna start doing is I'm gonna start measuring things like the corners, right? So I can see that the corner of the Garbage Pail Kids box hits where the corner of the shift box hits, okay? So when I'm on my paper, I can lay my pencil across and I can kind of make a mark that that's where that hits, all right? Now I can see that it goes back in space. It is not as steep as this angle, okay? It's a little bit less. So I can take my pencil and I can know it's a little bit less than that, and I'm gonna eyeball it. And I'm drawing through again, right? See that I'm drawing into this shape, even though I know it goes behind. It's because I can erase. Oh, it's so great. And it stops me from kind of like wobbling off or curving out of fear of this object, okay? Charcoal is so malleable, and especially when we're focused on finding really accurate and measured line drawings, I shouldn't be that worried about it, okay? Now I'm gonna do some measuring again, okay? I wanna see how tall this is, kind of in comparison to the shift box. It's like about half its height, which is actually pretty small, smaller than I think I would have drawn it if I didn't measure it. Again, lines 1 and 2 are going to be running parallel to each other. It's really helpful whenever I'm dealing with lines that run parallel. Notice that I'm not moving my wrist, I'm not moving my fingers to draw. That's kind of how you would draw if you're using a pencil or doing something small. I lift off the paper and I move my entire arm, all right? It's gonna be even easier on your larger paper than mine because you've got the full range of movement. It's just delightful, all right? Now I can see that another great example of kind of an open lid syndrome would be this top surface right here, okay? Our gut instinct would be to do something like that, okay? Where we're going to try to draw that lid popping up because our brain knows how much space is up here, but our eyes are seeing it very foreshortened, okay? So for example, if I hold up my pencil for sighting, I know that it is definitely not taller than the box next to it. In fact, I'm sighting with my eye and not with my phone, right? See how far down that is? So what I can do on my drawing is I can draw a line straight across the way I did this first line over here and know that that top corner can't get any higher than that line that goes straight across. Okay, I'm gonna make that line a little bit darker so it's easier for you to see that line. All right, and I can erase what came in here. Okay, and then I can see where it matches up with this corner, right? I'm laying my pencil along the front corner, and I can see that back corner is to the right of it, okay? So I know that it's somewhere in comparison to this line, it's somewhere over here, right? Now, again, the wonderful thing about that is if I know that that point is over here, where that star is, parallel lines, right? This line here, ooh, no, that's not a line, that's just the corner. Oh, see, I almost tricked myself. Whew. See, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing art, you get kind of hung up on it. What I did was I was drawing the line like straight across instead of actually measuring and drawing that angle, right? So we're seeing some like art teacher mistakes in real time here. So that angle is pretty sharp. It's actually sharper than the top line here, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see where that line is. Gesundheit. I heard my roommate sneezing. And I'm going to draw swoop through it. All right, but I'm gonna hit that corner because I measured that corner and I know that that's accurate, all right? So I'm gonna draw that line through it. I'm gonna erase what overlaps. And now I can do the parallel line trick, okay? What I'm gonna do is I have both my corners laid in where I know they are, right? Corner 1, corner 2, corner 3, all right? So I know that this line up here, I'm going to lift my whole arm. It's going to be parallel to, oh, see, I knew it would break eventually. Anyways, I can still draw with this teeny tiny piece of charcoal. I know you can't even see it, but that's how I'm going to draw. Also, that's how messy charcoal is. So like, be considerate of where you're drawing. Maybe don't sit on the carpet. Sit at a table, put something down, you know, little tips. All right, this line again is going to be wham bam, parallel, right? This line here is going to be swoop, parallel, which I actually didn't draw it super parallel, and I can do that by measuring here, right? I can set my pencil on it and see that my angle is off a little bit. That's because I'm drawing at like a really flat surface and I'm not lifting my drawing board up. This is one of those do as I say, not as I do moments. And again, swoop, swoop, parallel. What I'm doing is I'm just going through and I'm solidifying a lot of my lines so that I remember which ones are which. Because Vine Charcoal erases a lot as we go. Okay? And I'm gonna lift you up because it's again really hard to kind of see. But that's what it's gonna start looking like, okay? A lot of cross lines, and this is where we want to be, where we know everything is very well measured before we start laying in things like our shadows. For example, I'm going to point out that shadow right there, right? Which is like somewhere around here. And I can just start shading in my object lightly right up to the edge, right? We color in all the way up to the edge of the lines. Okay, because then what that does is that establishes that my light source is coming in this way, which is something really important. There are small shadows underneath this box as well. And this is when we start talking about things being comparative. If I'm looking at side 1 of the box, side 1 and 2, right? I'm gonna ask myself, is the side 1 darker or lighter than side 2? Is it darker or lighter than the shadow on side 2? You know? And I'm going to start kind of just coloring it in really gently, okay? Now I know I'm doing this really quickly within like 20 minutes or so, but the reality is that I want you to work to get your shapes as accurate as possible. And so you're going to have a lot of these moments and a lot of measuring, okay? Where you're really carefully checking on how things go back in space. For example, right now, this feels like this angle here is sharper than that angle there, okay? So I'm gonna show you what I mean. I'm gonna lay my pencil down, and if I drag it over, that's my cat shouting, it is a sharper angle. So I'm going to push it back in space and make it more comparative, all right? So that's what we're going to get to, and I'm going to post my finished drawing where I have finished kind of doing shadows and marks. Really the goal is to learn how to cite today and how to accurately measure using your pencil. So please watch all of the videos, read all of the handouts, and as always, feel free to email me or participate in Zoom with me in class. All right, thank you.